Malolele, Talofa, Aloha, and Bula. And whoever else is out there, we welcome you to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast, a digital live Kava session. All right. Well, we got the video up here. Like I said, Society for American Archaeology. So this is pretty reputable, right?
Mm,
This is not Pita and Sione doing excavation.
mm,
These are pretty legit. Um, and once again, it's archaeology of the Luatele crater,
mhm.
ritual and prestige of the Tuimanu'a, Ta'u Island, American Samoa. So that's what this video is. We'll kind of watch through it and do some reaction and have some discussion as we go through it
Let's go.
and kind of discuss that while I try to upload the
When
video.
I asked native Melanesians and Micronesians if they knew Tuitonga and they don't know what the hell is Tuitonga. And yes, well, as I said, Tuitonga, in my opinion, was the Polynesian Empire. Micronesians and Melanesians were really kind of outside that scope. There probably some stories there, but like I said, a lot of Melanesians were, you know, probably occupation were colonized during that time, and probably those stories didn't come through. But obviously, Melanesians had stories of the Manu'a going around with them. Same with Fiji. Fiji's a bit different just because of the vicinity to Tongatapu. Fiji, strong connection to Melanesians, Micronesians. There were already people there when Polynesians settled the islands, and because of mixing with Polynesians, they became part of the Polynesian kind of nation, if you were to say, culturally, and also um, the marriages. So, I'm not too sure with the Vanuatu. I know there's stories of Vanuatu of Polynesians' presence there, but yeah, I'm not too sure with the Melanesians and Micronesians with their connection. But that's my thoughts there. I don't know if you have anything to add, Dua.
No, I agree. I mean, and it looks like we have to upload and do some export the file. Nothing like
Maybe
doing it
another
live.
time. Maybe another time.
Well, no, it's converting it right now. It's converting it right
Oh,
now, but we
okay,
can
okay,
discuss.
okay, okay.
I mean, well, first thing, Noah, I kind of feel like you're being a little hostile, right? Maybe overly agile, but I mean, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't expect. I mean, you can go to Fiji, and Fiji is Melanesian, and they definitely know about Tonga.
Yeah,
So if we're
yeah,
trying to be technical here, then one could say yes. Micronesians, yeah. I mean, it seems like once again, the Melanesians do not have the same cohesive um, structure as the Polynesians, and the same thing with the Micronesians.
mm,
Um, so yeah, so that's the thing is, yeah, that would fit because there's not the unification and the um consistent behavior and language and religious beliefs. So one wouldn't
correct.
expect that from the Tuitonga and so forth. Yeah. Hey, yeah. Wouldn't be surprised, Matafa. Maybe it isn't the right word, but the saying is you gotta use the words that come to mind. Um,
Mhm.
let's see. Eh, oh man, everybody is on top of it. There's like aggressive, right? It was trying to make a rhyme, but it obviously failed, my brothers. Want to read that comment, Masi, while I check if the
Yep.
video conversion is done.
Some of these, this is from Clyde Moore. Some of these other islands barely have their own history. Their deities change with whoever's ruling. They have no order in their society like others do. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not too familiar with the other Pacific islands like the Micronesians and the Melanesians. Love their own history. Like I said, to me, my knowledge, every aspect of those places have been colonized. So obviously, there's been interruption into their understanding of their ancient history. But Fiji's one is pretty understandable because of the ties to Polynesia and Tonga being part of Polynesia, being able to avoid colonization was able to help kind of start and understanding our origins of our history. So that helps understanding our society, what it was like back then, and along with the recordings of people like George Vason to understand our history and also just our way of life, especially in the culture. And now new scientific data points helping us to understand our ruins more also helps rediscover our history. But yeah, that's what I
Okay.
have. Unless you have anything, Dua.
No, I mean, looks like the video's downloaded, it's converted. No,
A good,
that's the thing.
yeah,
It's
good
looking
question.
at a pattern. It's looking
Mm,
at a pattern, and the patterns that we see in Polynesia are not evident in Melanesia and Micronesia. And actually, saying that the Tuimanu'a is tied to Melanesia and Polynesia to me is actually a knock against the Tuimanu'a because that means they could not exhibit order, right? And
mm,
establish order. If you're saying, oh, the Tuimanu'a is influential and created all this organization,
yeah.
well, then why isn't the same organization found in Melanesia and Micronesia?
Mm,
Obviously, maybe the Tuimanu'a did visits there. We don't deny that. We know the Tuimanu'a existed,
yeah.
but looks like some of the viewers here have some other comments in regard. It is said that Mafu and 70 Tongan warriors taken to the Solomon Islands to cut sandalwood and murdering natives at the same time. This all happened before his Fijian Lao conquest. Like you said, there's a bunch of different oral history on that.
Mm, yeah.
Brown Monk seems like the Solomon Islands was a popular location. Brown
Mm,
Monk says the
this way.
Solomon Islands has an old song that sings about the Tongans coming to take them away and unalive. Wow, yeah. Once again, man, interesting,
Mm,
interesting.
mm.
LOL, ta kita, Masi. Oh, Yahweh, Masi. I didn't know you played the guitar, Masi.
I
Is this
wish.
a new?
Hey, here's the thing about the Fale family. None of us really play any music instrument. I married my
Uh,
wife. She's a pianist. She's really good at playing and stuff. But that's one weakness the this Fale family have. We cannot even play or even sing to a good way. But maybe we've gotten better. But from my understanding. But Kataki, God loves you.
sure. Here's one more question from
Yeah.
Mataafa while I finalize this,
Okay.
Masi.
If you guys believe Hikudeo is the God of Abraham, would you consider our people monotheistic?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so because that's my understanding. Because Hikudeo is, if you literally translate Hikudeo, the voice, it's a the that's what its translation. And if you go back through the scripture, as God is always described as the voice, and that's what's a big indication of what led our people to settle the islands, being the first people to settle the islands in
Mm.
the biggest ocean on earth. And in order to do that, they were guided by Hikudeo. And yeah, and there's some other common practices from the oral history, especially in Tonga with circumcision that was practiced with the believers of Hikudeo. With go trace back to the Jews, that it was in order to be what considered like the follower of Hikudeo. The Jews, a lot of them were identified with the males being circumcised, which is a big deal. What Tongans do, and still do today, as a big deal. So yeah, I mean that's my thoughts to it. Unless you have anything you
No, I
wanted to
agree.
add.
I mean, there's a little bit of a debate on whether the Jews were really monotheistic or not. That's
Mm,
a whole different story. But in the
okay.
sense of we believed in one true God that we were to worship, yes, Hikuleo was the God. That is the God who brought our ancestors to Polynesia.
Yeah.
So in that sense, 100%, 100% agree. All right,
Yeah.
let's. Oh, you had another comment to that, Masi?
Yeah. Well, and then I was gonna say, then the definition and the whole worshiping of and recognizing what Hikureo is kind of really deteriorated with the fracturing and crumbling of the
Yeah,
Tuitonga Empire. And then Hikureo, I think some people have referred it to a f- to
a
a
goddess
first
instead of a
fahu.
god. Yeah.
Yes, the first fahu and the female kind of thing. I was like, we don't take that position. It was more Hikureo. Definition of Hikureo is the voice, which is more ties to God, God of Abraham.
Yep.
So,
100%. Let me know if you hear sound, Masi.
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Not the best video, but it'll
Mm,
work.
yeah.
Hello, I'm Joel Plank, and I want to introduce my fellow the co-authors of this paper.
Oh, what happened?
Number one, Skeuli Temese. She's the former head of the Samoan Languages Department at the National University of Samoa, Center for Samoan Studies. I also want to, the second or the third author is Epifania, or Epi Suafua Tuai. She was the senior lecturer of archaeology and cultural heritage at the National University. She's now the director of archaeology for both the American Samoa Port Authority and also the American Samoa and Federal Aviation Administration in American Samoa, Pago Pago. The fourth co-author is Mohammed Harun Sahib. He's a lecturer in archaeology and cultural heritage at the National University of Samoa, Center for Samoan Studies. The focus of our
So, in short, these are legit archaeologists, academics, and two of them are respected academics in Samoa.
Mm,
paper is Ritual and Prestige in the Support of the Dynasty of the Tuimanu'a. And what's incredible about this dynasty is it covered three small islands, but this dynasty began sometime in the 14th, 15th century AD and
mm.
continued.
Okay, that's a big deal.
That is a big deal
Why is that a big deal, Masi?
because that doesn't predate the Tuitonga Empire by a lot, right? And
Yes.
there's no way we. I think we've kind of touched on it. We kind of gave the benefit of the doubt that it could have been a person of high rank from the Tangaloa before the Tuitonga
Yeah.
kind of started. But now these people are obviously saying with some Samoan or people from Manu'a or American Samoa
From a
that are
ruin, right?
from a
From an
ruin,
actual
right?
site. Yes.
Ruin that's probably advising that this is probably true. So obviously it's kind of come back to our idea. The more we talk about this, Tua, is this is this could be during the Tuitonga time of maybe a close relative of a Tuitonga title holder that went and settled in Manua. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Now that you're giving timelines, yeah, or time
Exactly.
frames.
And this is, you know, this is why we have these conversations and we talk about these things. And like we said, he also just mentioned dynasty over three islands. Right? Now, we can debate as to how or why they came to that conclusion, but let's just, I mean, I have been scouring the internet for studies. I can tell
Mm,
you right now, I can find a ton of studies on Tongan ruins and dating and radar scanning and those dates. It's very difficult to find some of the studies that are done on the Tuimanu'a, right? This is why Grok, when we asked Grok, the
Grok
AI,
AI.
on the AI, and we said, hey, Grok, can you search all the internet and let me know which dynasty or which empire actually probably really existed? And even Grok admits there is way more scientific data of the Tuitonga existing as an empire than the Tuimanu'a, because the Tuimanu'a is primarily only oral history. And even that oral history is contradicting, because you can find certain oral history even within
Yeah.
Samoa that's contradicting. This is
Each
why,
other.
like you said earlier, Masi, multiple data points gives clarity,
Yeah.
right? When it's just oral history and you're bouncing off of you and your buddies in a little corner, all of a sudden you can build up an empire that really didn't exist, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to our prestigious guests that we had to convert the file to.
To the early 20th century, a period of over 400 years.
Okay. So right there, at what they're saying is the Tuimanu'a, and this is all based off of their studies of the Tuimanu'a settlement, where there was a we'll let them go through the data, but they're saying their finding is Tuimanu'a 1500s, only over 400 years, which
Yeah.
fits some of the work you've done, Masi, to look at the dates, right?
Yeah.
Look at the lines and give it like, what was the factor? Typically 25 years or so,
25 years for
25,
each
30
title
years of
holder.
ruling. And even then was falling short. So, I mean, once again, this is the thing that is just, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a little exhausting, because every time we bring data to the table, and we're not trying to be rude, we're trying to find truth here, and we're accused of being disrespectful. We're accused of,
Yeah.
well,
Not loving. Not being
what-
loving. Not being kind. We're not kind.
we're not,
Hey, but this is our philosophy. It's good. It's important to be kind and loving, but at the same time, you need to have truth when you
with
love.
the truth.
Have truth
I'm
with when you
loving
be
you with
kind.
the truth.
Correct. Correct.
And so, and even a curse, some people were joking about TikTok and the heavy treatment we get there. Someone was like, man, you're gonna get cursed, curses are real. And I was
Yeah,
like, I
we
went
did. We did. That's right. That's right.
yes, Brown Monk, 15th century, where everyone else is saying, guess who they're saying was at the height of their governance and empire in the 15th century.
Kaufunua, huh?
Yeah, the Tuitonga. They're saying the
Yeah.
Tuitonga was at its height at that
Correct.
point, right? So, we're just trying to follow the evidence, and we granted we know that the scientific evidence isn't perfect, especially when they try and
Yeah.
go into the oral history, right?
Yeah.
But in regards to carbon
Timeline.
dating and putting
Yes.
dates and timeline, scientists are decent. Even then, it's not 100% accurate, but it's a lot better than just oral history on its own.
No, and that's an example of why the dating is only going to get better as long as we get better technology. Because now they're even saying the dating with the Ha'amonga is probably not correct, and it's going to probably even go further. So
Even further,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, but we work with what we got. That's what we're saying.
yeah,
Whatever technology we got.
yeah, 100%.
The area of our focus is Luatele, or the interior of a dormant volcano. It's also known as Judd's Crater. The Samoan archipelago, it comprises from west to east, Savaii Upolu, and then Tutuila. And then as you proceed east, there's the Manu'a group, comprising 3 islands, Ofu, Olosena, and lastly Ta'u, which is the farthest east. Now, Luatele is the dormant volcano south of Fitiuta, and in Ta'u, and it's hexus by a rather steep climb. And then once you get to the lip, you go into the interior. And our survey was a phase 1 archaeological survey covering 50 acres. Now, I want to describe a little bit about not only the archaeological features, but also the tala, or the cultural histories, where the elders in the Samoan community in Fitiuta described what happened, or what these features, the functionality of these features. First, there was on the rim of the volcano, there were long defensive walls And those were defined as the solo tanata, which is the line of people. Next, there were a series of three uh,
See, this is interesting. Assuming that their assumption is correct, that
Mm-hmm.
these are defensive structures, why is there significant defenses in the Tuimanu'a's homeland
Yeah.
if they were governing a vast empire? That when you go to Mu'a, it's not a defensive structure. Even when Tupo the First was conquering all of Tonga, Mu'a did not have a fortress,
Yes.
a kolotau,
That's correct.
because
Yes.
because why? My favorite phrase,
Hmm.
because it was the sacred ground. Tupo the First never dared to attack the Tuitonga because it would cause too much problems for him, because it would potentially cause a unification of everyone else to gather behind the Tuitonga because of the respect, because you're looking at a line that has been in power for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting question that I don't understand. If the Tuimanua was this great empire, right, and it had this great influence, why is his primary residence a defensive
Fort.
structure?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So that to me has some questions that caught my attention, which was kind of like, well, this doesn't seem to make
Mm-hmm.
sense. But he also could be misunderstanding it, right? I don't
Mm.
know. I'm just saying
No.
if he's correct. Any thoughts on
No.
that, Mussy?
Yeah. No. Good point. That's the unique thing about the Mua, because that was the residence of the Tuitonga and the Tuihatagalawa. There were no forts, which forts was very common in the whole, I think, from Bea onwards to the west side, which is the Hifo side, and also to Nuku'alofa, which were common to have defensive forts of always kind of battling with people. Fina Ugalala would come and do his raids. Tupo the first, the Tuihatagalawa, would come and do its raids and stuff, and also in the other islands in Vava'u and Ha'apai. But that's another evidence of to suggest that you know the headquarters were in Mu'a in Tongatapu and not in Manua, from what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Defensive structures.
And this is the other thing. There's two things that explains as well, Masi. And then Mataafa, we'll get to your question here in a second. Um the Tuitonga did not have to rely only on military power. There was a religious component to the
Yeah.
Tuitonga's power, and that's why he didn't have to have a defensive fort, because a lot of the recognition and the power that the Tuitonga had was
Mm,
because of his descending or being the heir from Tangaloa. And that ties to Mataafa's question here. Brothers, I'm trying to grasp the control concept. Can accept Tuitonga to be older, but how does that mean unified Polynesia under Tuitonga? The whole legitimacy of the Tuitonga derives, Mataafa, by being the heir of Tangaloa. That Tangaloa, in our perspective, resided on Tongatapu, in Tapuhia or Langi, and when
mm,
the Tangaloa line ended, he bestowed the inheritance on Aho'etu. And that's really what allowed the Tuitonga to leverage that influence or that inheritance to say, you guys were all unified under Tangaloa. I'm the heir,
mm,
right? I am the continuation of that authority. And that's
mm,
why some people viewed the Tuitonga as a demigod, right? And so forth, even though that is just long story. That's outside of Tonga and a lot of things, because we say Tangaloa wasn't a god. The god was Hikuleo. Tangaloa was a man, and he had a son named Aho'etu, who he bestowed and created a new title, no different than the Tui Tonga created the Tui Hatakalaua and then eventually the Tui Kanukupolu by the Tui Hatakalaua. So that is how the it's not that the Tui Tonga went and created this unification. The Tui Tonga leveraged the unification under Tangaloa to continue the
mm.
rule and the governance. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yeah. Well, just to add another evidence of the unification, when they would have the polo polo and a nasi. There, we did a video of this. Mataafa. We did a video of this of the findings of people doing archaeological findings in the ruins in and places in Tonga. 60 or 80% of the materials that we're finding in Tonga Tapu were from Eastern Polynesia, from Samoa, Hawaii, from different places, even up to some places in Melanesia. So that's another indicator of the vast influence and unification of other islands coming to Tongatapu to pay tribute in the Inasi and Polopolo. If that answers helps to kind of clarify your question.
Yeah, 100%. Malo, Wada Bears, faded but still answering strong. Still answering strong, Wada Bears. Malo.
Malo, whatever it is.
Say Lupes, or pigeon catching mounds. This feature was defined by David Herdrick, who was the former American Samoa Historic Preservation Officer. And these.
So those star mounds that are found all throughout the other areas on Samoa, once again, they identify as pigeon snaring.
Yeah.
Right? The
Yeah.
Sia Lupe, which that's exactly what the name says. Right?
Yeah.
Were areas, these were star-shaped features where different chiefs of different ranks, the Matai level was the talking chief, the Ali'i were the higher chiefs, and then the Tui was kind of the paramount chief, and they competed with each other in pigeon catching. They hid behind blinds on the edges of these rays, and then with a long net captured pigeons, and the one who captured the most pigeons was the individual that was to receive the most mana, and we'll talk about what mana means. We also have a very long, near the rim of the volcano, we have a very long cave extending at least 142 meters. And this was an area where Va'atusili, a demigod, demi-deity, spent 3 nights in the cave.
Have you heard of that history, Masi, or that story?
No. I'm not too familiar with that story.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard it either.
Eventually became a giant, defeated his sister's betrothed, which was the Tuifiti, or the paramount chief of Fiji. He defeated all of his forces, only to have his sister relent and say, "No, I want to marry Tuifiti." And so he went back to the mountain and turned into stone or faded away. So that's what you have on the rim of the volcano. Now, once you get into the interior, you have the great mound, or the burial mound of the Kiasa of Tuimanu'a, the originator of Tuimanu'a Moa, the originator of the dynasty. And then surrounding it, you have a ray.
So once again, they're bringing this information off of the original Tuimanu'a. So that's why they're saying 1500s, 400 years, because they're saying this is the original Tuimanu'a where it started. And from him all the way until the last Tuimanu'a, that's the timeline that they're establishing there.
Yeah.
Of stone walls, and on either side of those, you have a series of small piles of stone, and we're going to get into the functionality of that, but according to the cultural legends, these comprise burials of individuals that were close to Tuimanu'a that wanted to be buried with him, and the closer they were, the more they were buried closely with him.
So remember that. This is another interesting thing.
Are these burial grounds too? Where they're showing kind of thing? These rocks here?
So the major one they think is the burial ground, and I can't remember if they identify, but these smaller ones, quote unquote, oral history, says people are buried there. Remember that. Remember that, right? Because this is one of the things. A lot of oral history can be good, but there's a lot of oral history that is not always accurate.
And also on the rim of the volcano, you have 3 very large mounds of rocks that are defined as the toa, or the generals for the Tuimanu'a, that overlook the crater to keep it safe and to make sure his burial is restored.
So that's what it kind of looks like. Very similar to Pulimele, right? The stacking of rocks.
Yes, that seems
Very,
to be a very common kind of like their
construction technique.
yes, yes.
Now, on the floor of the crater, there's a lot of small stone mounds. There's also 2 fale foundations, or domestic foundations. One is very interesting, has a stone bowl, the remains of a stone bowl. And again, and these were the caretakers, took care of the spirits, both the Manu'a, the ancestral spirits, and the Aitu, which were more of the, not demonic spirits, but more different spiritual entities not related to ancestry. There's also a series of long rock walls that are extending, some extending from the Kiasa of Tuimanu'a. And then, but most of the features, it's interesting, are on the eastern side, the northern side, and eastern side of the volcano. Very few on the western side, and as you progressively move west, even on the rim, there's no features. Now, what Epi focused on was the larger context. And what she discovered was, first, Seth Quintus has it recently defined, sometime in the 15th century, it might be in the 14th century, some carbon dating suggests that there was an intensification of agriculture, especially in Ofu Island, utilizing the ditch and parcel method, where the parcels were defined. There were ditches dug around the exterior of them. And what Quintus is suggesting is this was a method of agriculture to preserve these little plots of horticultural activity or intensification to prevent when hurricanes came, or not hurricanes, but typhoons came. These would protect the vegetation, more or less protect the vegetation from very destructive flash floods and water. This is also coinciding with the use of terraces. A lot of terraces, Epi and I also did a part of the old Ofu village survey, where we surveyed a series of terraces, very steep terraces. These terraces are built on the inclines of the mountains leading up to the top. And according to...
And once again, it looks like he chose that location because it's a defensive location, high up on a hill, right? Yeah. Terraces, looks like fortifications, overlooked by generals, and he's kind of in an isolated position. It sounds like someone who's worried about invasion,
repercussion, or something.
Yes,
yeah, something.
Or something. Yeah. This doesn't sound like someone who is ruling and has religious power, right?
Good
so
point,
it's these are just kind of the simple questions that are popping up. We're gonna just watch the whole video so that people aren't saying we're trying to hide something. We showed you the whole video that we saw, and there's just a couple points here and there that are interesting. We'll come back to those little mounds that supposedly people were buried in, because we'll see what they find when they actually dig in those mounds.
The Tala, they were really focused on building palisades, a series of wood, and we have examples of that, where either a ground-penetrating radar sees a series of post molds at the front of the terrace, or there's a mass of vegetation, mass of timber in front. And also another aspect, a defensive aspect, is what they loaded stones and large boulders at the edge. And that's indeed what we find in Ofu. And other archaeologists have found that in Tau. So there was also a warning facility called Fosia, that was built on Nu'utele, a little islet right off the coast of Ofu, to warn as if there was any visitors coming, if they were friendly, mean for trade, or if they were enemies. So there was a defensive component, and what was really interesting is these Tala mentioned that these fortifications were all over the three islands, and then you could connect from terrace to terrace by notch logs of coconut.
Once again, the three islands, they're all heavily fortified in defensive
Positions.
structures.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting. Interesting.
Another aspect of this centralization was the what you find in Lu'utele and Fitiuta, and this is the rituals of the Tuimanu'a. These mentioned sacrifice, human sacrifice, cannibalism, and tremendous power. And this relates into the mana of the Tuimanu'a. Mana is a good word for power. Now, Quintus, I think, did a good job of defining this mana as provisioning for the people. And Mead and Kikuchi and Kramer, and recently Jeffrey Clark and Nolita Motu talked about the spiritual power. Tuimanu'a was allegedly so spiritual that he forbade Tonga, the premier chief of Tonga, to bathe in his pool. And when he did, he died, and Tuimanu'a raised him from the dead. He also was, this title of Tuimanu'a was bestowed by Tangaloa, the chief deity of the Samoans.
See, this is the kind of stuff where it gets kind of weird, right?
Because going off just oral, it's kind of moving away from what their findings are.
It's moving away from the finding. But then here's the thing. We're saying the first Tuimanu'a was 400 years ago, 1500s, bestowed by Tangaloa.
Tangaloa's way, doesn't mean.
You know what I mean? This is you know, every time the scientists trying to do this weird blend of oral history and the science, it just gets wonky because we're like, it doesn't match. Let's just stick to what are the structures, what you found, what's the dating look like, you know, like this thing, this great mana and power. Well, dude, he had 3 islands. What great mana and power could that be? I mean, I mean,
no, and that's the thing that's what contradicting, right? 1400, like that's not even the top 7 of the Tuiton. Like it's not even close to Tangaloa. So, and that's what I'm thinking. He could probably get it mixed up with somebody being probably in keeping the name of a Tangaloa. Maybe that could have been something that's probably an act, but there's no way that he forbid a Tuitonga to go there and bathe there for the sake of he was so sacred, right? Because we know he can't be that sacred if that he doesn't even predate the Tuitonga timeline. So if Tuitonga is more sacred because one, very, very older. So sacredness only goes on to usually the ones who are older because they're more mystical. They're more, you don't see them a lot, but you've heard of them from your relatives or your people. So it's more sacred. So Manu'a probably sacred within the vicinity of its archipelago area, maybe, but see, and this is the thing where, like you mentioned, oral stories contradict and everyone has a truth, but obviously if everyone has the truth, then somebody is just making it up within their own.
If everybody's right, then that means everybody's wrong.
Yes.
We can't all be right. We can't all.
That's just my thoughts on that. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. You know, and this is the thing. I mean, we're just trying to find the evidence.
But Sayuli has defined other aspects which are very interesting. the Tuimanu'a had the long sight, or what they call the tofa mamau. That was not only kind of the prophetic long sight, could tell into the future, but also efficient planning, the more mundane long sight of preparing and provisioning for his people. There was
Once again, maybe we're just reading in between the lines, but if this was a descendant or sibling of the Tuitonga who understood how to manage administrative power within a civilization, one would understand why he would have such knowledge, right? He would understand how to do planning in a complex society. And so it's interesting. It's interesting. I
Yep.
mean, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Hmm.
That some of the advantages of having access
Yeah.
to the central or the root or to the capital.
also a duplication of stories. Not only do you have Atusili in the story in Ta'u, but you also have it in Upolu. There was also the stories of the Tala of conquest, where the Tuimanu'a conquested all the areas, including Tonga and
Once again, every time we get into oral history with the actual data, it gets wonky. You're telling me in the 1500s that Tuimanu'a conquered Tonga, when at the same time everybody else is saying the height of the Tuitonga was in the 1500s?
Yeah.
Which one
Yeah.
is it? It can't be both. You can't
Yeah.
sit there in Manu'a and say we invaded Tonga in the 1500s. I mean, it just kind of gets, and yet we're the ones being disrespectful. We're the
Yeah.
ones that's trying to change
We're off.
history.
We're off our
We're the
rails.
ones,
Yeah.
exactly. Once again, oral histories alone can be very misleading and confusing. But whenever you tie it to physical data,
Yeah.
you have a better chance of not only understanding the oral history, but also sieving through. It's like, hey, maybe that story doesn't make sense, that we invaded Tonga in the 1500s.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, or you want to jump back into it, Mas?
No, and this is probably in the future with these studies. It's gonna be very important to collaborate with other Pacific Polynesian islands, because yeah, like what you said, when you get the dates from their carbon dating, right, and then it seems like they're just going off of that, not considering the other oral histories from others, and then you just work it out. Because like I said, if you have everyone's oral history, there's no way you're going to be able to discover the true origins of Polynesia or the true history of that particular island if you're just going on within your own scope. But if you have the understanding that we were one nation, right, and then go and collaborate with other Pacific islands, then you're like, okay, so who's right, who's wrong, and then hey, if there's no agreement, hey, it is what it is. All we can do is present our ideas and let the rest of the Polynesian diaspora spread all over
Figure
the
that
world
out.
decide. You know what I mean?
And here's the funny thing, right? So what are we going to have to do with our cousins and brothers and sisters in Tapu Tapu Atea who
Yeah.
said that was the center? Or how about the Tui Pulotu or the Tui Fiti saying that's where the center is?
Hmm.
Which one
Yeah.
is it, right? This is the
Yeah.
thing that we're talking about. We can't all be right. We can't all have been originated from Tahiti,
Yeah.
Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji.
Manu'a. Yeah.
We gotta figure this out, right? And this is where ruins matter, like we talked about on the other study that we had on another live, where they said the biggest indicator of a civilization of power and influence, monuments. That's
Correct.
like 101. Once you start reaching a certain level of civilization, what's the natural thing that pops up? Monuments.
Mm.
Right now, there you could have monuments that disintegrate over time, especially if they're earth or wooden. Understood. So you can lose certain monuments,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, monuments are an indicator of stability, of
Sophistication.
sophisticated structure,
Sophisticated.
right?
Yeah.
Both religious, social, and
Yeah.
political. That's why, people always mock us. I don't know how to react to it, Masi, when
Yeah.
I see these types of comments, and it's hilarious because it's on TikTok the most. These guys are holding on to their ruins. Okay, like, is that supposed to be an insult? That's like me saying, that's like
Yeah.
someone saying, those silly Egyptians, they hold on to their pyramids. They
Yeah.
think they're ancient because of their pyramids, when my grandfather said he built a pyramid.
No, that's the funny thing, right? No, that's the funny thing. We have ancient civilizations that dwelled, right, that were the past, the pyramids of Giza, and even some of the pharaohs, you know, and also
Mhm.
another one, the Colosseum, that's
Yeah,
still in Rome.
a Roman all over.
That
There's multiple similar colosseums all over the place.
yes. So I'm just saying, Tonga Tapu specifically was the headquarter of this empire or nation. And obviously we were the only, and if you notice, just for their viewers, if you notice the way it was structured, a lot of those forts and stuff around Polynesia are just a lot of human labor just piling a bunch of rocks, right?
Mm.
Bunch of rocks. It's not to the level to kind of prove, like, like the Colosseum level or the Pyramid of Giza. You're
Carved-
talking about the
Yeah.
Ha'amonga, a Maui, that's literally big, three stones stacked on each other, and then you're talking about land soil movement of other slabs of the Langis all over. We're talking about thousands all over Tongatapu. So I'm like, you don't get that anywhere of the Polynesian islands,
And here's
right?
another one, Mussy. 100 acres of man-made land
There's another one,
that exists.
right?
Tell me somewhere else in Polynesia where they took ocean and turned it into land. 100 acres,
Mm,
and it exists to this day. People are living on that. Do you really think that it's an insult to say you're holding on to your ruins?
yeah,
And the message, I was like, Shanna, do you realize
yeah.
how kind of silly that is? And yet we're the ones that need to bring evidence to
We're
the table
crazy.
up here.
We're the crazy one. We're the
We're the
ones not
crazy
taking. We're the ones not taking our mental
history
illness pills.
seriously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah. See, and that's the thing, and that's what makes, see, the only islands that are like kind of built the same way, but I can think of like Rapa Nui, but that's a special place of the stopover place to Waihi.
To Vaihi,
Here in
yeah.
David Fale, so that's a special place with building the, and I feel like that's why they're building those faces. It could be the first ancestors from Waihi that's kind of
Mhm.
coming over to Polynesia, but that's why Tonga is more credible to be the headquarter place of our empire, of the Polynesian Empire, Polynesian nation. But yeah, it's funny. It's cool stuff. All we can
Yeah.
do is just give our ideas, let the public decide. We know the public can be, you know, from 1 to 100 at any time, and we understand, and it is what it is.
The next time I see an Egyptian, I'm gonna be like, get off of holding on to your pyramids for how
Don't
old,
matter.
and all your mummies. You guys, my grandfather said,
You guys were this way or
you guys.
that way, or you guys. That's not really your civilization. That's not. It didn't start from you guys.
Anyways, we'll come back. I think we're
Yeah.
kind of getting a little too excited.
Hmm.
Yeah, like,
Fiji. The problem is in Tonga and Fiji, they don't have that reciprocal stories that Manu'a took over our area. But what they do feature is this mention, and this is all across Polynesia, of the spiritual power of Manu'a. That the Tuimanu'a was so filled with power, mana, spiritual power, that Tui Tonga, instead of invading the island, it was the only area in Samoan archipelago that was not invaded by Tui Tonga, and preserved its independence, because Tui Tonga wanted to protect, not interfere with just the tremendous spiritual power of the dynasty. Now,
okay. So if I am to accept this story,
Yeah.
right? Let's just say, assume I accept. So the Tui Tonga wanted to protect, and that's a possibility. We've considered that, right? That maybe the
Yeah.
Tuimanu'a is a sibling of the Tui Tonga, or a descendant, which would make it a descendant of the Tuitonga. So my next question then is, Masi, what are all the defensive forts for?
Mm, mm,
Right. So
mm.
who's right next to Manu'a?
Upolu. To Tuila, you know? Yeah, who knows?
So so you're telling me the Tuimanu'a was the head of the Tuimanu'a Empire, but he had to build defensive mechanisms for the islands down the road
Yeah,
because the Tuitonga, for whatever reason, the Tuitonga says, okay, we're not going to bother the Tuimanu'a, but the Tuimanu'a is still building defensive structures and
yeah,
lookouts. Who are they looking out for?
yeah,
Besides maybe the neighbor. So you're telling me you had to defend yourself against your neighbor, but you ruled the entire Polynesian nation. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Some of these things just don't add up.
yeah. No, and that's the thing, right? Right, with the Tuitonga staying in Upolu, Savai, and having influence in Tutuila and all of that. Obviously, there is it's and this guy is saying that it's such a spiritual mana. It's not really. He's probably getting it twisted with. It's more. It could be some respectful way of saying this could be a close relative of mine. I don't want to. It's not a thing for me to kind of go and just kind of tell. And that's the thing we kind of bring to the table. It's probably we think it could have been an older brother because we do have stories, right? Of the older brother not receiving the Tuitonga title from the father for whatever reason. It could be a different reason, and we're probably thinking this could have been the person, and then
A
maybe this
potential explanation. Yeah.
potential explanation why the Tuitonga, Tuimanua went there, and maybe on his way out he did something whatever on his way to Manua or maybe to Tutuila or whatever. And maybe that's why there's such a heavy presence of defense fortification of the Manua Islands. And it's just not a Tongan etiquette to be when you do have the title influence to kind of keep pouring on your close relative or brother. And that's one we don't know if that's the right one, but I'm just saying that's been some of the oral history and one that we know that's happened in
Mhm.
the Tuitonga tradition, and we can see it here if we put that now because now we know the timeline. It's not older, right? It doesn't predate the Tuitonga. That this could have been one, and maybe that's
That's
why.
Masi. That's not what my grandma told me.
Okay, okay, yeah, all right. Hey, whatever Grandma tells you, that's you let it stick with you,
Listen to grandma.
and yeah, just do
Well,
what you're
and
told.
to go along with what you're saying, this is relatively normal um Tongan practice. And if you guys, anyone who's read George Vason's book,
Mm,
when the Tui Hatakalaua gave him the land, and George Vason was very, very
yeah.
successful on that land, the Tui Hatakalaua, whenever he wanted, would call tribute from anyone, right? He would come and say, hey, give me tribute, give me tribute. You know
Yeah.
what George Vason said? That the Tui Hatakalaua was very kind to him in that
Mm,
he would never come and tell George Vason, give me tribute, right?
mm,
Even though it was his right to do so.
yeah.
And George Vason said, even though he was being very kind to me, I would still go take him something,
Mm,
right? Even though he could come, because the George Vason said that's what he did to all the other people, right? Hey, give me
yeah.
the tribute. And he would sometimes send out, hey, everybody bring
Mm,
food, blah, blah, blah. But he would never do that to George Vason because of his love and his respect to George Vason.
mm,
He wouldn't do that. And
mm,
so one can easily see that for one circumstance or another, like you said, that could explain why the Tuitonga didn't go to conquer or
mm,
invade. You think the Tuitonga couldn't have done that?
yeah.
Right? You telling me you really think the
Yeah.
Tuitonga, but obviously there's another explanation for it. And it is not unheard of for a high-ranking Tongan ruler to say, out of respect, I'm not going to come and bother you,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh. Oh, this cracks me up, man. I'm sorry, Grandma. I will not, I will go and let go of my ruins.
Some of these rock mounds, Mohammed Sahib looked into, and the obvious explanations of the burial pits. Another explanation is these are a series of Ufi pits, especially if
You see where we just went? The
Yeah.
oral history just went from, you see those mounds? That's where all the super loyal people to the Tuimanu'a are buried, in those rock mounds. We went from super sacred burial mounds to
To Ufi pits.
Ufi pits.
That is funny. That
And
is funny.
here's another thing, Masi. How common is Ufi, and what is the preference of Ufi among Samoans?
It's no, it's not a preference.
Yeah.
Most
So
Samoans think in their diet. Yeah.
yeah, who has the preference of Ufi?
The Tuitonga. Yeah.
Tongans. Yeah, the Tuitonga. So
Yeah.
you're telling me Tuimanu'a over here is
Yeah.
Samoan, but what is his preference?
Ufi.
Ufi pits? I don't
Yeah.
know. Unless there's
That's a good
another,
point.
unless
Yeah.
Ufi is for another word in Manu'a that I don't know of, but the Ufi that we're familiar with is the preferred meal or highest rate, right? Is Ufi. So, anyways,
Yes.
I'm just
No,
saying there's like these little nuggets all over the place that you're like, doesn't make sense, doesn't add
yeah.
up.
No, and Ufi is one of those things in the before money came over was your show of wealth or your
Yep.
status as a as a as a Tongan person or as a person in whatever village you were in. It was
Yeah.
your status. Yeah.
Because it's the most difficult thing to kind of graze. It's very
Yes.
it's a very needy plant,
Yes.
right? You
Yeah.
need, it takes a lot of time and energy to do it right.
Correct.
So looks like the guys on YouTube are having a great time. They're laughing and having good time about singing Tula Fale. You guys
Nice.
look like you guys are doing really good over there. Malo Kautama.
Mari, Gautam.
Looks like Nacho over there is doing a solo. So malo.
Mari.
you have a ring of stones, not in the center. This is a characteristic of an Ufi pit or yam pit. There's also other possibilities. It could be a commemoration, where a burial commemoration, where the body is not under the stones, but it's simply a commemoration. The problem with this is this Kikuchi only describes one commemorative mound, and that's in Tutuila. Another possibility is that these are just stone heaps mentioned by Green and Davidson. They excavated several of these heaps and they could find nothing under it. There was no burials, there was no subsurface features. It was just literally a mound of stones. So
that was just a Sunday Umu location.
No, that was just a umu after their Kava. It's funny. It's funny.
But once again, what I'm saying is, look at what the oral history said. Okay, and that doesn't mean that this proves the oral history is wrong. Maybe there were people buried there. All I'm saying is, this is an example where oral history, when it's not tied down to something physical, it's very difficult to interpret and to nail down. That's just kind of my point there.
This broaches into the most tantalizing aspect of the state formation processes, because here we have three islands that are very interesting. You have some interesting parallels with Robert Carniero, an environmental circumscription, where the agricultural intensification is needed to strengthen the polity. A polity that in this case lasted 400 years. You also have the martial.
I don't know if he seems to be announcing this 400 years like it's like, this is fantastic news for the Tuimanu'a. 400 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he realizes he's undermining the Tuimanu'a position.
Yeah.
Right? But he seems so excited. It's like, yeah, man, we've been able to identify this dynasty lasted 400 years. And everybody's like, what? Only 400?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Solomons and Barbara Bender talking about the big person hypotheses, where an individual or an individual group believes that they are descended from a deity, and in this case, or appointed by a deity, and that's what you have here with the Tuimanu'a being appointed by Tamaloa. You also have Ian Hodder and the prime mover of ideology, and this is very interesting with the idea of not only is the Tuimanu'a Moa descended or appointed by Tonga.
Oh man, guys, you guys are cracking me up in the chats. Yeah. If we weren't trying to keep it PG-13.
Mari, ikaw tama.
Oh, yeah, my favorite, the one that passes the filter, even though there's been some hilarious ones earlier. Somebody give that. That's 2 claps for the palak.
Hey, I feel bad. I feel bad. The Manu'a or the Samoan the Ha'moa that was advising this palangi. Oh, you front up the camera, but this is what I think is. This is the story. And I was like, she off the palangi. Make him give a thing, and then the thing won't do the video of their findings and mixing their oral histories together. It's just
Oh,
poor
Yahweh.
guy, man.
Oh, Yahweh. But he seems so excited. 400
Yes,
years.
400 years. Yeah.
You know, this is amazing. Well, it is amazing for us, but just for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
We're on opposite sides of amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh. Guys, getting too much laughter out of here, man.
Awesome.
But also that the Tuimanu'a is blessed by Tangaloa. And finally, you have kind of Clausen's kind of combination of factors that are leading for the stability of the dynasty. So here at Luitela, you have the role of ritual ideology and spiritual power. You have the threat of sacrifice and cannibalism. You have burials surrounding the Tuimanu'a that might not be burials at all, but commemorative. And these all serve to support the dynasty of the Tuimanu'a that lasted 400 years until the earliest part of the 20th century.
Shit. Yeah. No, and that's why. No, and that's the funny thing. Claymore was saying they look like they set him up. They know it's a failure explanation, and their findings is like, oh, I guess we didn't find something that was older, and then whoever the Manu'an person saw this, oh, we don't predate. Just go and explain and have fun. And the guy coming probably from Minnesota is like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. No idea. No idea. No idea that. Good stuff. It's good stuff.
Hi, guys. I'm not trying to be. This is just hilarious. Yeah, I'm not trying to be rude.
Poor guy from Pennsylvania. He's just over there, so excited. Give
400 years.
400 years of Polynesian history, because he's probably thinking this is amazing accomplishment for Polynesians, and then the ones who really know are like, dude, man, poor guy. Poor guy.
So excited.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh. Guys, I did not think I was going to enjoy this as much as I am. But it's kind of just, it's ridiculous to me in many ways, because I'm thinking of all the comments how disrespectful I am and Masi is. How we're ruining the history. Everybody recognizes, and then we see this.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, so it was fair to ask a question at least.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Anyway, Masi, you're gonna have to summarize for us.
No, I mean, poor guy, man. Just my thoughts. The guy is just over there. I don't know if it seems like he's just only understanding Manu'a and Tutuila, and just Upolu and Sabai, but looks like my man has no idea with the other Polynesian islands, especially with the carbon dating, carbon dating that predates the findings what they found. But hey, my man was excited to present what they found. I'm sure it went through a lot of sweat to go, you know,
Mhm.
do the work and stuff. And my man, you would think it would be somebody because I know he mentioned a Samoan being part of their teams that would be able to present their findings because it's in their land. But looks like my man was chosen and he did his best and it was exciting and it is what it is. But hey,
Yeah.
it's just another data point to strengthen the Tuitonga position of being the only dynasty that's more than 400 years, uh, be all over Polynesia. But yeah, I mean those are my kind of closing comments on that
Yeah.
presentation. Unless you have any new angles or
So
comments to us.
I'm just trying to gain my composure, man. I did not realize that would just dude make me react that way. That was hilarious. Anyways, that covers our our Tuimanua section. To let's see. I gotta look back at the notes, Masi. All right. All right. What we're gonna close out. These comments are hilarious. And it
Mm,
doesn't help that our viewers are absolutely hilarious. I mean, I'm
mm,
here trying to like, okay,
great.
get it under control. And then I see the comments and it's just absolutely entertaining. Anyways, now that we're
Awesome.
coming back, let's see here. I'm going to share the last part of our program today. And it is a study that we're just going to dig into. Um, Speaking about the royal tombs, specifically the Pai Telea, and some of the findings that are there. And I think this gives good contrast to
Mm,
what we just viewed, right? And to look into the context of of what we're looking at here. All right, that was too much.
mhm.
All right,
The rapid emergence of our was it how do you say our archaic Tongan
yeah,
states, the royal
yeah.
tomb of Bioterea. Mm,
So we'll start out with a couple things. New research indicates that the royal tomb Pai Telea was built AD 13 through 1400. So even that alone predates Tuimanua.
correct.
And but this is what's interesting to me, and this seems to be a theme every time they dig into the Tongan ruins and artifacts. It says more than 200 years earlier than its traditional association with Urakimata, right?
Mm,
So they're making an assumption that this predates Urakimata, or the other way to interpret it is
mm,
Urakimata is 200 years further back, which
yeah,
would push Ahoetu back, which would
correct.
push everything back. And this is also when we look at when we looked at that urban scanning,
Yeah,
right? And it pushes it back 700 years. So when
correct.
we look at these little data points, just those two things alone, that's a 900-year shift.
Hmm.
Or was it a 300-year on the other one? Whatever it was, anywhere between 5 and 900 year shift to the left.
Correct.
I mean, that's significant. That puts Ahoetus in the BCs.
Hmm.
So now put that in context with what's being found on the dating with Tuimanu'a. It's
Yeah,
very difficult to say now that the Tuimanu'a predates the Tuitonga and that the Tuimanu'a is Tangaloa and all these other things. Right?
yeah,
See, this is what we've been saying from the beginning. Oral history is valuable, but what really refines it is when you tie it to a physical location. This is what Tevita Fale has based all of his research is he took the oral history, tied it to a ruin, a location, a burial site, and that's how his Tuitonga list was built. And that's where we can get the value of leveraging scientific um, empirical data and trying to align it and see what fits and makes sense of us understanding and navigating our oral history. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
all right. The next part here, we're just going to go over the highlighted, but the evidence suggests that the early Tongan state was a powerful and geographically expansive entity,
Yeah.
able to rapidly organize and command the resources of the scattered archipelago. So, once again, we're looking at a level of organization that's sophisticated, that's efficient, um, and can call on resources when needed. Like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
Masi, to build all this, you gotta not only access the resources, but you gotta organize it, and then you have to have the know-how to
Yes.
execute the work, like the 100 acres of basically civil engineering, right?
Hmm.
Then to build the Ha'amonga, all these other things, even though we do take the position the Ha'amonga is much older than the Tuitonga. But any thoughts on that, Masi, before I read into the other stuff?
Um. No. No. It's just when it says expansive entity, I think that's another way of saying that expansive is just expanding way beyond the tongue. And
Yes.
when you add the history, and then you add the oral history also from the Upolu, from Savai, then you add the history of Uvea and Futuna, right, and Fiji. So that's what I'm saying. Like that I think that expansive of that entity of the Tuitonga is very vast, and that's another that's another way of just saying that it was a nation just run and headquartered in Tongatapu. But
In
that's
Tongatapu.
just my
Yeah.
thought.
It basically says that the Tuitonga seems to have the capacity to leverage
Yeah.
resources to grow and to expand into other areas, like you were saying.
You know what's interesting too that I'm thinking? It seems like, because maybe that's the reason why the ruins in Tonga took a lot of time and a lot of specialization, is because they were able to command so much laborers to come and work on these ruins. Because what I see in those forts and maraes around Polynesia, it seems like maybe not as very simple in a way of constructing, and
Yeah.
maybe not as labor intensive compared to
Intensive.
what was
Yeah.
that was
It's
happening
basically
in
like an
Tonga.
Amaka in Hawaii, right? You
Yes,
can have
yes,
5 to 6 guys working consistently, and you
yes,
can build a decent marae off of that. But when
yeah,
you get to the Pai Pai, you get to the Ha'amonga, you
yeah,
get to the civil work to do the Fonuatanu.
yeah.
That is on a scale much
Hmm.
larger
You a
than
lot,
you would
yes,
need to build these other things.
hundreds of probably laborers to work on those. Yeah,
Yeah. And it takes not only organization, but it takes resources to feed and to maintain,
eh,
right? And to
yeah,
maintain a healthy labor force. There's a lot that goes into it, which kind of goes back to what they're saying here is the expansive capacity to do that. That's not easy, and it
mm,
takes a level of power, sophistication, and organization and resources
yes,
to do that. So this kind of the introduction goes into it a little bit more. Masi, it says the physical remains of the archaic states hold the clearest evidence available of the decisive social and political process that accompanied the creation of complex societies.
society.
That's pretty much just saying what we discussed earlier, right?
Mm, mm,
State level societies are rare in
yeah,
prehistoric Pacific. The archaic Tongan state is the only known polity in Oceania to extend political control over an entire archipelago and to influence islands beyond its borders. So
mm,
there's two things that are important here.
yeah,
When they say borders, they are thinking of Tonga as it exists now.
yes,
Those borders didn't exist before,
mm-hmm,
right? So all they're saying is it expanded beyond what Tonga is now outside of that. But really, the ancient Polynesians wouldn't have seen that border. They would have just seen
yes,
islands, part of a whole nation.
correct, correct.
All
I
right.
was just gonna add, Dua, that that's when, right, you kind of mentioned that's when oral history can fit in, because obviously these researchers do not understand the whole oral history of why they were built this way. They're just saying obviously these structures are proving very sophisticated, and there's some indication that the extensive influence is much greater than the Tongan archipelago kind of thing, right? They're just thinking maybe it's just to the other islands in Ha'apai and Bavao, but obviously it's much more uh, expansive than that. But I mean, that's just my thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
100%. And it says here the Tongan state emerged. See, this is the thing that's
Mm,
interesting, out of eastern Tonga Tapu at Heketa in the 12th to the 13th centuries
mhm.
AD. It didn't emerge. It these guys, the
They just
Polynesian
moved.
nation
Yeah,
is already well established there. And after the capital was relocated to La Paja, the state reached its height around 1500. No, sorry, we can't do that. That's when the Tuimanu'a conquered Tonga.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
gotta double check that, right, Mussy? So we'll
yeah.
make a
Sure.
note. We'll make a note.
Poor guy from Minnesota, man. Poor guy.
Following an aggressive campaign of inter-island warfare conducted by the 24th holder of the title paramount to Tonga. I wonder if they're referring to Kaulfo Nuafekai,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Because
Because
he
that's the
seems
height.
to be the
The
most
height.
militaristic to
Mm,
Tonga.
mm.
The premier, oh no, I don't need to do that. The tomb is the largest. See, this is the thing. Like, this is where the
Mm.
ruins matter. It represents something.
Yeah.
The tomb is the largest prehistoric structure made in workstone in the South Pacific and contains blocks of chloral limestone
Right.
weighing over 20 tons. This is what you were mentioning earlier, right? We're not talking about two Amaka guys
Yeah.
building, stacking small stones. We're
Yes.
talking about sophisticated and complicated understanding of civil engineering, structural
Yeah.
engineering, some level of math understand. This is why me personally, we had to have had a written language at some point,
Mm.
because this is the type of knowledge that requires math, civil engineering, structural engineering. You don't just sit there and
Mm.
spend, you know, years and thousands of hours to build something that you can't guarantee won't just fracture
Correct.
under the pressure.
Oh, or when there's um nature that happens of earthquakes, or even tsunamis, or just terrible weather and stuff, or rains and floods, that these ruins will not crumble. So
Yeah,
obviously it's withstand, because even now they're
it's
still
still
visible.
there. Yeah. And what's interesting, in one of the studies that I looked at, they said there's like a lime cement that they found between the stones, which made me think of, there's some oral history that the Paepae Telea was not exposed stone, that they had some kind of plastering over it, like some
Eh,
kind of
eh,
a finish over it,
eh.
and it's weathered away through time. But I thought that was interesting that in one of
That
the
is
studies I
interesting,
saw, there was kind of like a lime type of cement
to
that
protect
they
it.
found, to that they had in between the joints. And I'm
Oh,
wondering, if you have that, then yeah, it's like, like you do, like in concrete, where you have
yep.
that finish over the top. It just
Mm.
makes it looks cleaner, it looks
Smooth.
uniform,
Mm, mm.
right? And it looks like cleaner, just a much more beautiful. So there is oral history that was something that existed back then, and it was interesting that the study found some of that. Third, the presence of stone tools associated with the tomb and geochemically sourced to multiple islands. This is
Mm.
referencing that study that you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
Masi,
Mm.
indicates frequent long distance voyaging and the growth of the tributary base, like you were mentioning, right?
Mm. Mm.
Where is the evidence of the umiti that we discussed previously, right? How do
Well,
we yeah.
obviously, the umiti seems to be only seafood that was only happening. Hey, and maybe that was, and and like I said, the the Manua Tuimanua obviously had some status, but like I said, maybe it wasn't other material things, but it seems to be only seafood to be gathering there. But just my thoughts, just my opinion on that.
Mhm. 100% in Tongan traditions. J20, that's Pai Pai, is associated with the 29th Tuitonga Urakimata, also known as Telea, who lived around 1600 AD. The structure is famous for its massive limestone blocks that were reputedly made in Uvea Island and taken 850 kilometers to Tongatapu on the height of voyaging canoe Lomipea, which is the largest,
Interesting.
right?
Because I know this is a debate, right? With the or am I just thinking of the Haabonga? Isn't there like a debate of where they're getting their limestone, either from the Uvea and Futuna
All of those,
or
yeah.
Ewa,
Yeah.
right?
That's all the oral history. They haven't really confirmed where or when. Some of the people who they make a good point, like Uvea is a volcanic rock,
Yeah,
if I
I mean,
understand. So but that's what the oral history is explaining. It with oral history, maybe it's just saying they brought it from somewhere far away. I don't
mm,
know
mm,
the details on that. Um, it says here the basal and second tiers are constructed from carefully fitted blocks of coral limestone, except for two beach rock slabs in the eastern and western walls of the second tier. The
mm,
third tier is made of slabs that form when stratified beach sediments are cemented. Oh, this is the study. Are cemented with calcium carbonate
mm.
in the intertidal zone.
That's
Oh
what you
no,
kind of mentioned, right? With the
no, no,
whole
no.
cement.
This is
Oh
this
no,
is mentioning something else because
okay.
this is just saying that this is buildup of calcium from the location from the
Mm,
beaches. So I mean, but what this is saying is there's different rocks from different places, different
okay.
locations, different
With
types
the
of
like
rocks
the
uses.
first level could be somewhere
Yes,
else. The second level is somewhere else. They're not from the same area.
correct.
Okay. Yeah.
The total amount of quarried stone in J20, which is by Biotelea, was initially estimated at 519 pounds or tons, but
Mm,
block dimensions recorded during tomb conservation in 2014 indicate that the structure probably contains
mm,
700 tons of stone. So
yeah.
the structures are getting bigger, the timeline is getting older.
Mm,
Like these are things that are getting better and better and better.
yeah.
Um, See here, the L-shaped corners, and this is on the Pai Pai,
Yeah.
designed to stop wall spreading. That's what I'm
Mm,
saying. This is a pretty sophisticated design,
yes.
you
Yeah.
know. And according to our oral history, who built the Pai Pai is the Samoans. They seem to
Yes.
have a lot of knowledge, had the right tools, and understood how to do a lot of this. This was something that
They
our Samoan
specialize in.
brothers
Yes.
and sisters were really good at. So let's see. I have another note the addition of soil layer used to hold the slabs and the old lagoon edge. So remember, this is the Pai Pai is on Fonuatan.
On
This
the
is
ocean.
where,
What the
yeah,
ocean
this
is.
is
Yeah.
technically should have been ocean.
Yes.
And so this red right here represents the end of the old or the shoreline
Mm,
before they extended. And remember, this goes on for much more. This is just
yeah.
coming down of the shoreline and it goes much deeper.
A
So
hundred
once
acres,
again,
right? 100
yeah,
acres.
100 acres overall. So once again, this is not just, oh, the Pai Pai is great, but it's built on basically man made land, which makes it even more sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah.
South profile showing reclaimed land deposit of coral and limestone boulders, limestone debris, a soil deposit added to hold the slabs of the nearby tomb, and charcoal lens and dated whatever. I'm not sure what that is, but basically we're talking about importing different kinds of material to stabilize and to hold
Mm.
the Pai together. So once again,
Look at
this
the
is
different
a
materials to
yeah,
when they bury.
and gives a level of civil engineering. This is civil engineering that's
Yeah.
going on here. Understanding how different materials interact with each other to build a stable overall product.
Yeah.
Geochemical analysis of the carbonate crust and limestone flake from indicated that right here, the cemented crust is limestone debris, which was produced by shaping the tomb blocks.
Mm.
So cemented crust, like we're saying, there was oral history that there was a cement used on
Present.
these
Mm.
rocks.
Mm.
So that's another thing that's tied to oral history, gives a little more validity to that oral account.
Yeah.
Think that may, here's another one.
Partially buried work limestone block recovered from the South Quarry area due to its thickness. The block was probably intended to be used in the second tier. Okay. And the transverse fracture suggests it broke during transport. Hmm.
Yeah. So we're talking about these large stones and so forth being
Mm.
transported. I don't care. Even if you're only moving this thing a mile,
Yeah.
that is not easy to do, let alone for the possibility that they were shipping these things on the ocean. That's just kind of crazy. Um,
It is.
Want to read that one, Mashi?
Yep. Mata first, the 29th Tuitonga is reputed. I just got a quick question, Tua. What list is these guys going off?
They're probably
Just
going off of
curious.
the Wesleyan one. That's the most
Wesleyan. Okay.
accepted. The one
Okay.
with Ahoetu at what 950 AD.
Okay.
The
950 AD.
Catholic
Okay.
one is not the
It's
one
a
that's
short,
usually
very,
referenced.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. So Mata the first, the 29th Tuitonga, is reputed to be buried at La Paja in either or Samoa, Manu'a Islands, or he was lost at sea, and the J-22 was built as his memorial. Interesting.
yeah. So this, I guess, this is based off of oral history. They're saying that he may have been buried in Samoa, in
Yeah,
Manu'a. I don't know. I
yeah,
haven't heard that oral history, but apparently, that
S-
there's some discussion. They got it from somewhere. I don't know.
yeah. Well, this is why it's important to do a collaborative work because obviously those guys in Manua have done the, extensive research and they didn't find any bodies, right? Just ufi pits.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's the
yeah,
next step.
yeah. And here's the interesting thing: I've never heard stories of Tuitonga being lost at sea. Maybe that's something we
Yeah.
could dig into. That's why I just highlighted it. Maybe that's something when Danny's on, we can bounce it
Mm,
off of him. It is feasible, however, given the close ties between Tonga and Uvea in late prehistory, that Uveans might have been involved in the construction as well.
probably.
So, which is possible, right? We know there's for
Yeah.
sure the oral
We need.
history definitely confirms Samoans, but you need a lot of
Yeah.
labor to do a lot of this stuff. You're bringing labor from wherever you can bring them in the entire nation.
Yeah. I'll just ask you, Dora, before we move on to this next paragraph here. Did they mention who were their Tongan advisors? I would assume they had some kind of. Was it just the Ministry of Education, whoever was the Ministry of
They
Education kind of guys
they're
that kind of give their
well,
oral backing?
they're mostly just citing other people.
Oh,
See, they're citing
gotcha.
other people, and they may have had some
Okay.
other source, but they're primarily just citing
Okay.
other
Gotcha.
books or other articles.
Okay. I can read this one.
Okay.
There are several difficulties in reconciling the traditional history of the land reclamation and construction of the J-20 tube by the 29th Paramount Uluwakimata the first. First, although traditions place land re- reclamation at the time of the 24th Tuitonga, 1500s, any landfill would have had to be removed in order to build J-20 if it was constructed by Urakimata the first. Second, placing the J-20 tomb on reclaimed land already occupied by a junior chiefly line makes little sense given the spatial spatial separation of chiefly lineages with the Tuitonga in the east and Tuihatagalawa in the west. It is more probable, given the consistent dating results, that J-20 was built when the entire area was used by the Tuitonga, and the spatial Division occurred later, leaving the J20 and J21 tombs in an area occupied by the junior paramount.
Yeah, so they're just kind of saying they're trying to understand, right, the oral history of
Mm,
saying it was built by a Tuitonga, but then it's on. Remember the man-made land for the
yeah,
Tuihatakalaua, and they're
yeah,
saying, hey, there's two interesting things. If it was built after the land was extended, then they would have to dig up
correct.
the expanded land so that they could fortify it to hold that weight, which once again, sophisticated understanding of
Mm,
civil engineering. But then there's also the challenge of, well, if that was the Tuihatakalaua land, why was it built there, you know,
mm,
when it'd been there for the Tuihatakalaua? Now, that could be because that was the Tuitonga coming back. And it could have been a way of showing I'm back because
yeah,
Urakimata and their father had been in Samoa for 5 generations. It could have
correct.
been a power move, quote unquote, to come and build the biggest langi, right?
Mhm,
And to try
mm,
and reinstate dominance. Who knows? There's
interesting.
could be a handful of ways to explain that.
Yeah. The
Um,
F. Let me read
Go
that
ahead.
one.
Yeah,
The effort needed to extract the shaped limestone blocks is not known, but must have been significant, as Spainman records that the removal of zero point 0.4 meters, was it not square, was it
cubed.
quarter, cube
Yeah.
of coral limestone during pit digging at La Paja took 2 men with metal tools 4 hours.
And it's 700 tons of stone.
Yes.
With modern tools, took them 4 hours for that little thing right there.
With modern tools. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, just imagine the level of effort trying to imagine that,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is massive, you know,
Mm.
this is massive. I mean, can't help but to think like, geez, the
The royal
oh, go
well,
ahead, Mas.
yeah. The royal tombs of the Tuitonga are sacred structures, and when quarried, the fresh surfaces of the J20 blocks would have been highly reflective, as limestones typically have a solar reflective index. A now buried surface of yellow white limestone construction debris extending at least 60 meters to the west of J20 might represent a plaza, or is it country
Courtyard.
yard, courtyard, suggesting that the tomb was meant to be viewed by canoes entering the Fanga'uta Lagoon. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So
And that
what
and
that
that
oh, go ahead,
no,
Mas.
wasn't no no isn't there stories of like when it was built in a way that when canoes and stuff would enter the lagoon, that they are seeing bunch of mounds or
Yeah.
langis that are
Wow
being built.
factor. Yeah.
Yes, interesting.
It's basically to let everyone know when you come for your inasi, when you come for
Yes,
the polo polo, you've hit the center of the civilization, right? There's
correct.
some wow factor, and that's what they're representing here. Is these seem to be located in ways when you clear
Yes.
out all the trees,
Mm.
right?
You're coming in and you're
You're coming
seeing.
into the capital.
Yeah,
There's no doubt. You're not going to see what you're going to see here anywhere else in the civilization, kind of like the pyramids, right? Kind of like
yeah.
that, where you're like, yeah, this is next level.
You
I'm
know
not
you're
in
in
the
Egypt.
outer
You
islands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you want me to read the next one, Tua?
Yeah.
Geochemical analysis of stone tools recovered from J20 and from the north and south quarries identified volcanic material from central Tonga, Ewa Island, Samoa, and Fiji.
So they're saying in one portion of it, they found from all over different areas.
Nice.
See, once it just talks about the marriages and alliances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So long distance voyaging, strategic marriages, and impressive monumental architecture were a
Yep.
feature of the early Tongan state. This is why ruins, yes, we will hold on to the ruins because
Yes.
it is a important testimony of what actually was achieved. I'll read these ones.
Okay.
It says such conditions supported the emergence of highly organized core polities that, in some instances, dominated entire regions. And through Strategic outposts, once again,
mm,
expanded their influence to the surrounding periphery.
mm,
One of the poorly resolved issues about the rise of complex entities relates to the state formation and the specific mechanisms and the length of time required to create a centralized political entity from smaller autonomous political units. A
yeah,
second issue relevant to the Tongan case relates to state
power.
power and whether archaic states, once formed, needed centuries to acquire control over the landscapes and people of the titular state, or whether early polities exerted control from the outset over a wide range of human and material resources within the borders. Basically, saying in order to establish a stable empire,
Mm,
you don't achieve that overnight. You have to have long term stability and leadership. Tuimanu'a over 400 years does not provide that.
nah, that's not long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tui Tonga over thousands of years. Okay. Now you can have that.
yeah,
Um, Tongan traditions supported by archaeological data, so not
yeah,
just the oral history, but
yeah.
archaeological data assert that critical changes to the political system and management of land were made just three lineal generations of Tuitonga, the 10th Momo, 11th Tuitatui, and 12th Talatama. So they're saying they saw significant changes in the way land was managed, which is an
Mm,
indicator of expansion and growth.
yes, and the height of the
Yes.
power of the Polynesian, the Tuitonga Empire.
In this short period, the first stone structures were built at Heketa. Then, after the move to La Paja, much larger projects were begun, including limestone cut ditch system, lagoon reclamation. These are the things we're talking about, right? The man made land, and the
Hmm.
construction of the remarkable J20 tomb that marked the state center. Once again,
Mm,
the centralized area for the civilization. The
mhm,
new architectural innovations, especially those involving the quarrying of coral limestone, materialized the apex status of the Tuitonga at a scale not seen previously.
mhm.
Recognition that Paepaetelea is probably the first of the royal tombs to be built at La Paja demonstrates that the early Tongan state could command significant workforce while volcanic stone tools sourced to Fiji and Samoa and the presence of Tongan fortifications in East Fiji and in Ovea indicate early long distance interaction in warfare. Once again,
Yeah,
expansive history, not limited to three islands within a
yeah.
small corner, purely based off of defensive fortifications. Blah. We could go on and
Hmm.
use the contrast between Tuimanua and the Tuitonga empires.
Awesome.
Anyways, I think that pretty much covers it, Masi. I mean, yeah, we covered a lot, did a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully, this was enough data for people out there who are asking for more data. And you know what?
Mm,
We have more, and we will continue to bring out more.
yes.
Um, but any closing thoughts, Mashi?
No, this last study here, Dua, I think that big part it mentioned in this research paper of their findings, along with Tongan history and archaeological data points, prove that Tonga commanded a large labor force and also influence outside of the Tongan archipelago of today. And yeah, I mean, if this is not strong enough to kind of decide, I think we've kind of mm, automatically understand that it's pretty much understanding of the who's the origin of the empires of Tuimanua and the Tuitonga, because the Tuipulotu is it's still not close by. We did have somebody did share their list, their list. We still hopefully he can come and present
Join
his list
us.
and yes,
Yes.
join us and tie down exactly where these titles of the Tuipolotu, where they come from, but this is just a strong evidence of why the Tuitonga is the only headquarters in Tongatapu for the Polynesian Empire. But yeah, that's my thing.
No, I appreciate it, Masi. Really, at the end of the day, hopefully I didn't overdo having a good time and having a giggle. I just couldn't help it. But in a more serious note, we reiterate we are
Mm,
all one people,
mm,
right? The and I'll say this and I'll say it over and over again. There was no this is Tonga, that's Samoa.
mm,
It was the Polynesian nation. We did have names for the islands, but it was all one people. I believe in a unified um, state with religious and political and social infrastructure that united us as a people. And really, this is an effort to try and understand the truth. And we can't say, yeah, we're one people and we'll be united if we can't determine where the origin is, where we come from, because we can't have unity when everybody's saying you originate from your own corner of the
mm,
Polynesian Empire.
mm.
Really appreciate the viewers. Really enjoy and
Yeah,
are
thank you
grateful
for
for
the
the
viewers. Awesome.
interactions. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Um, Honestly, this week was probably one of our best weeks for subscriptions, especially on YouTube. So
Mm,
thank you once again to everybody for each share, each like, each comment, and each subscription. It does go a long way in
mm,
helping us get the message out, share our thoughts and ideas. We'll continue to have our interviews with guests, and then
mm.
also continuing with our uh, digital Kava sessions. What up, Bears? What will be our official closing statement? If you want to put in the chat what your closing statement will be to everybody, um, we'll give you a second if you're still on. What does Vaini bring to the table
Oh,
with its tacos? Bring us a
wow.
Vaini taco to end it out if you have a comment. But
Vaini poto. Oh, wow.
Vaini.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Hey, all right. Water Bears has brought the final statement. Polynesia, biggest nation as far as squirrel mileage is concerned.
Malo.
100%. I think that should be a t-shirt once we get to it is Polynesian nation. And with
Yes,
that being
sir.
said, to the Polynesian nation, ask the hard questions and stay curious. And till next time, be safe and have a good one. Thank
Malo.
you. Peace.
See ya.